Hello and welcome to episode 192 of the Foundry Roundtable. I'm your founder, Drogan1701, and with me is my genetically modified co-hosts, Greendragoon, Markhawkman, and DuncanIdaho.
I've been modified with an extra pinky.
I've been modified to be extra aggressive. Not only that.
I've been modified to go to very high speeds if I'm given spores.
So if we could pause for just a second, I think I'm hearing I'm hearing the stream through somebody's microphone here.
No,
I've got headset.
We were discussing that earlier. That's the reason why Greendragoon restarted. It's just kind of this weird staticky sound that pops in every now
No,
and
so
then.
I'm actually hearing the stream.
I'm not hearing it.
Why am I hearing it? Oh, you know why I'm hearing it? Because I was listening to Kael's stream earlier and had the sound on. So it's actually on my computer that I'm hearing that.
Dun,
So,
dun.
yeah. Problem between user and keyboard, right? Or chair and keyboard.
Pebcac.
User error.
Problem exists between keyboard and chair.
Exactly. So anyway, here we all are. It's kind of the first time we've been able to get together since the launch of Victory is Life because of, just various summer things. We've been out and about. I went to a motor race in Texas, and Dragoon went camping, I think it was.
Yeah.
Fun things to do in the summer. But obviously we wanted to try and get together because Victory is Life is out, and it's awesome, and we can talk about it.
Yes.
Oh, the Texas Grand Prix was pretty interesting.
It was.
Or the Texas 600. So anyway, though, Victory
it
is
was
Life.
worth going to. That's for sure. And a lot cheaper than STLV, I can tell you that.
Now, before we get started, I should apologize. We've been getting a little bit of feedback and interference from Skype today. I'm not sure what's up with that. It's not too bad, but everyone, I apologize if you're hear a little bit of static in the background.
And that one's not an imaginary issue like what I just had. So that's a real thing. So we're going to start off with, we got some actual new items in the Foundry.
Mm-hmm.
So Dragoon, if you haven't already, start up the Foundry, and if you could kind of take us through those.
Sure thing. Pull up the notes here so I actually know what I'm showing off. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the space costumes because those are the actual complete ones. We start off, we've got a bunch of Drazuli ships, which is interesting because they have not been released as playable ships, but they are here in the custom editor.
And
Makes you think it's sort of inevitable, doesn't it?
Yes.
Drazuli lockbox. I mean, when have they not done that eventually?
Never.
Yeah.
They've never not done that.
Whenever we reach a point of reconciliation with the Herc, that's when we'll get their ships.
That, or we just finish bombing them back into the Stone Age and steal their stuff. I mean,
And I gotta say, I'm looking forward to this one because it looks very Vorlon.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I do. This is probably my favorite one. Because I don't know, it has a really interesting look and it's got some really interesting architecture on the underside.
To answer Horian's question, no, we do not have Herc or Drazuli mobs in the Foundry yet.
Nope.
But obviously, you will be able to reskin existing combat mobs as Herc ships. So,
not that it would actually
that.
play anywhere even remotely the same because they don't behave the same. But you could at least make them look the part.
So this is the Dreadnought, which is very large. I'm thinking R&D pack for this guy.
It is a very interesting looking ship. It's kind of like what you would expect from having like a hive of insects build a ship.
I absolutely love the cutscene with that thing coming through the wormhole.
Oh.
Which evoked another Babylon 5 thing for me, which was the bit from Third Space when the alien fleet comes through the portal.
Oh, there's another thing in the game that reminds me of that, and it's that thing where the Undine bring their planet killer from fluidic space to our space.
Yeah. They're playing around with the asymmetric designs here, which is kind of cool sometimes.
Well, actually, when you look at this one really closely, it's not as asymmetrical as it looks at first, because the things that are long on one end are short on the other end.
It's asymmetrical, but it's balanced.
Yeah.
So one of the things I find interesting, and this is kind of one of the first times that I've had a chance to look up close to these Herc ships, because I mean you fight them and stuff, but you don't really get to sit there and admire them. But a lot of them have these like little spikes. It almost looks like it almost looks like pointy grass.
Well, one thing that pops into my mind is those the missile launchers on the Vorlon planet killer. It reminds me of those, but I think what those are meant to actually be is you remember those spike-shaped ships that come out of the planets? I think those are actually meant to be those.
Yep,
it's possible.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's funny when you talk to designers sometimes. There are certain types of designers who will have a use and an explanation for every tiny little detail, and then there's some that will say, "Nah, I just put there because it looked cool." I don't know which this one is.
The thing that strikes me about those guys is that they kind of remind me as like, maybe they could be launched, but they also might actually just serve as habitation. Because they reminded me a little bit of just like a field of termite mounds.
Mm-hmm.
So
next up, it's all very insectoid, of course.
If you operate under the assumption that they actually take a bunch of small ships and somehow build the rest of the ship between them, it's possible that the little small ships they started with are no longer functional.
Next up, we've got the cruiser, which is significantly smaller. Kind of interesting because it's got the spikes in between two sections here, so it's not like they could be launched. So
yeah, this one I like as well.
It's like a motorcycle with a sidecar.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? If you turned it sideways, it would actually be a lot like the Vorgon ship.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
In general shape, yeah.
Long sticky thing that's tapered.
Yeah, two entries for the Dreadnought.
It's just that the actual way this one's meant to be oriented is what makes it look weird and alien, because it's, what we would think of as sideways.
Well, if you want a ship that's right side up, the frigate is mostly right side up and symmetrical.
Well, the frigate also is about the same size as one of the things that pops out of the ground.
Now, I believe we actually had this before Victory's Life launched, right?
We did. This just appeared right with the prior to Renegades Regret, the Scylla Charybdis.
That's right.
Yeah. Because there was the one mission where the Herc ships show up that's actually prior to Victory's Life. That's like a teaser for what's going to happen in Victory's Life. And we saw those in that. But only those.
So it's a little hard to tell because there's not really any way to tell the front from the back. But I think the large end is actually the front, and then this back end is actually the engines.
Correct.
Yeah, if I remember right, that's actually the direction it comes out of the ground, is nose first.
All right, so let's see. Okay, so beyond the Dradzuli, we've actually got a bunch of Adar ships.
Yes. I'm going to guess all of the stuff in the new lockbox or Z store pack.
As far as the ships go.
Okay, so.
Oh right, the new pets. I'm just going to use the generic term pets because not all of them are actually fighter craft. Yeah, I don't think we have those.
Okay, so we've got the more traditional bug ship, and I believe this is the updated version.
Hmm.
I think so.
This is a T6
Well,
version.
Well, see, because some of the things in here, you actually have multiple like hull options where you can like swap the cells out and stuff like that in the Foundry editor, the same as you would in the main game.
Yeah, so we've got the Tier 6 updated version parts of this, as well as the base model.
So yeah, you can actually swap between the two. So there's a strike ship and heavy fighter.
Yeah.
For your choices. And you can mix and match, and you can do all the hull options, including the like 7 variants plus the upgrade. So we have all of that. And we get into we got the carrier, which is huge again. Got a little bit.
I see like 4 different entries for Jem'Hadar carrier. Are those actually the same ship, or are they like 4 different carriers?
I think there's a duplication of 2 types, but there's 2 different types of ships that have been designated as carrier. One's older.
One of
this
them
Vanguard
is the this is I think is one of the gunboats.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's the wingman.
Yep.
I think that's the Jem'Hadar wingman.
And that one's busted.
Mislabeled as a carrier, but whatever.
And that one's busted too.
Okay, so it's 2 busted, and there we go.
All right, so we get the Dreadnought carrier, which is the more traditional look.
Yeah, there we go.
But then we got the Type 2, and then the Advanced Dreadnought. Wait, is this actually one of the ships we currently have?
The Advanced Dreadnought? I'm not sure, but
it doesn't look familiar.
I get the feeling I've seen it somewhere in game, but it's not one of the Vanguard pack ships, as far as I know.
No, it's not going to be. It's not definitely not a Vanguard pack ship. It's got a completely different design. I was thinking it was going to be like they updated the promo pack recently.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
going to take a look at that.
Didn't they put something in the new lockbox?
Yeah, that's not it though.
Okay. We have a second entry.
Yeah, because the most recent lockbox didn't have any Jem'Hadar stuff in it. It was all things from other races in the Gamma Quadrant.
Okey-doke. I'm gonna have to search around.
We've got the escort carrier. And the advanced escort carrier.
I'm scrolling through the news feed.
I'm not sure we ever actually had the Dreadnought, not in this form.
Well, but you remember that ship that in the old 2800 missions, Aaron would use as his personal flagship?
That's not it.
Yeah, but also that particular ship, as far as I know, we never had that one available either.
Okay, look in the promo pack. You know what? This might be upcoming or unused promo pack, or just an unused design,
or something that they might add eventually.
Yeah, so it's hard. Like I'm taking a look at the promo pack right now, and okay, yeah, we've got. I was wondering if they had more than one type of Jem'Hadar ship, and no, they don't. So, yeah, that's definitely a new ship. Because they've got the 2 types of Jem'Hadar bug ships.
Yeah, and they did release a T6 version of the escort carrier, which is probably what this is. Yes, but yeah, they have not released a Dreadnought for the Jem'Hadar, which is, I believe, from the episode with the Valiant where they fight the Super Dreadnought.
Yeah, it's that. That's what we've got. You know what? Here, hold on. Because if they've updated, like, okay, so, you know what? We might have that. You know, I'm just going to take a look in the Lobby store. Because,
I just looked, and I cannot find any listing for a Jem'Hadar Dreadnought in either the faction or the Lobby/Lockbox ships.
Infinity Box?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it includes those, so.
Yeah, because I'm thinking is like if they updated the escort carrier, then that's a lockbox or that's a lockbox / Lobby ship.
Yeah, but
for
they
the
had the
Dominion
escort.
box.
But they never released a dreadnought, not T5 or T6 otherwise.
Oh, okay.
They just released the escort carrier and the.
Well, no, they've got the dreadnought. Let's see. No, there is a Tier 6 Jem'Hadar. No, it's totally in the game. Jem'Hadar Dreadnought Carrier Tier 6. And it is available in the... Yeah, it's an Infinity Box ship. It was updated. It was probably updated when they did the updated carrier. Or, sorry, the escort carrier. Because that's when Kael flies. So I was figuring, like, wait a minute. They usually do those in twos. Or like when they usually update like applicable ships when they're going through with the Tier 5 to Tier 6 lockbox and lobby. So they did the temporal ships. They did the the Alachi ships and all that. So yeah, we do have that in game. You got to go through the Infinity Box or the Exchange to get it. And
so we have a couple of entries for fighters. Jem'Hadar Fighter and Fighter 2, and they all appear to be the same.
Bug Fighter.
These might be the hangar frigate pets, which also look like the bug ship.
Those actually look a little smaller than the bug ship somehow.
Okay, so now we got the Jem'Hadar Heavy Escort.
Yeah, those are fun.
Nothing T6 of that. That's just the one variant. And 2 entries for that. So a lot of duplication, but there's at least one working version of everything in here.
We've seen this before when ships get added sometimes, and it takes somebody, one of the devs, doing a pass on it to reorganize everything and make sure all the entries point at what they should.
Yeah. And at the moment, our Foundry person is in training. Okay, and then lastly, under ships, we have got, I can find it here, the Damar class Cardassian Science Dreadnought. It's got a few options in here. And the Data class Cardassian Intel Escort.
Now there's a third one.
What's it called?
I don't remember. It's the flight deck cruiser, isn't it?
Yeah, we do have all three. It's just the first word of the name isn't Cardassian, so it does take a little bit of searching.
Yeah.
Oh, right. They did things like name them to top class something or other.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
I think there's 2 that were named starting with D, right?
Mm-hmm.
I forget what the other one is. I don't know. I'm still leveling my Cardassian, so I haven't been able to fly any of those yet, or haven't chosen to fly any of those yet. And I'm looking forward to it. They're quite cool looking.
I only picked up the starter pack. Okay, I'm in game right now, so I'll be able to take a look at what we got. So okay, Dragoon,
Yes.
the Gimor class, GHEMOR.
And there it is.
Oh, good. So we have all 3.
Yep. Just a matter of knowing what you're looking for.
So that's a boon to people making missions about Cardassians.
And it should also be said that the updated uniform is available in the Foundry. And that's what players will be getting at some point in the future for their Cardassian characters.
And as Kael mentioned, they haven't apparently worked out when or how we're going to be getting it playable.
Yeah, but if you want to preview it...
That's a good point. So we do have Kanban now make Cardassians, which we couldn't do before.
why don't you show us that? Of course, you probably already are, and I can't see it because of the delay on the stream.
Oh, we do. We have the species option?
Yep. I just made
Awesome.
a Starfleet Cardassian.
I'm gonna...
I was looking for the...
Just got to get rid of that hat on him.
I just figured, yeah, we wouldn't be getting this right
we're
away.
using
so that's cool.
previously created characters to...
Yeah,
I don't want to take
well,
time.
It's not like we said earlier. So there are some things where it just automatically gets put into the Foundry, seemingly with no special attention paid to it.
Things that are default options for players, even if it's behind like the C store, often get added by default or automatically.
Yeah,
that's been my guess.
Yeah,
did you say we've got the Cardassian uniforms in here somewhere?
We should. I mean, oh, you know what? We definitely have them for female. So I'm gonna take a look at some.
Yes. It's another one of those.
I remember back on a previous live stream, we looked at that. We actually found that we had it prior to Victorious Life launching. Pieces.
Yeah, it was Zero. It was part of Zero's big costume explosion. Yeah, I've been using those parts. I know we've got the collar, and we've got the pants.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
we might not have the upper uniform.
So not everything, but at the very least, we can create actual Cardassians.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, given the backstory of Cardassians in Star Trek Online, we actually have valid reason to have a Cardassian wearing something like a generic Intel uniform.
Well, I had years ago when I made Sink the Bismarck, I had a character in that was a Cardassian in Starfleet.
Oh, actually,
I'm going to have to update him now.
If you take the black version of the Sierra thing and don't put a comm badge on it, it's actually a very, very generic looking uniform. When you change the colors to not be like a Starfleet color scheme, it suddenly becomes like a very, very different uniform.
And so, I got a female selected. I want to say there's a couple of... so we got the Ennis shirt, only for females.
Yeah, and that's probably one of those just random additions. So we haven't gotten any major content updates in the costume department. It could likely be that Kael just is still learning that's part of the process.
Yeah, sometimes these things creep in regardless, like pieces, parts occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
And then, no Ennis shirt under loose. And only female. Well, that's a cool looking shirt, though. With a V-neck.
It certainly, the Ennis and null Ennis pieces provide some good sort of generic parts.
Yeah, I've been really liking having those in game, especially for the shoulder pads and chest piece, because on a Fed, I basically made that the new Starfleet security uniform.
They actually kind of look good with the basic Jem'Hadar uniform too. The shoulder pads.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, we actually have enough options there that we actually have some things that look vaguely similar, even if they're the wrong thing.
Okay.
We're always looking for more options to making like civilians, and non-faction people. So anytime we get something that helps with that, it's welcome.
All right, so I think that pretty much covers everything I had for new assets that we cataloged.
Yeah, and it's primarily in the department for just miscellaneous ships that we generally get. I think it's, what was it? Is it Thomas that adds those in, or Taco?
It's not Taco. Taco's an environmentalist.
Yeah, there we go.
Taco's like the guy who does things like new console assets.
Yeah, so I think it's Thomas who goes in and does the ships.
And I think Jam Jams has done some in the past.
Yeah, I'm not. I couldn't tell you exactly, but one of the ship artists is under the impression that it's standard procedure to add it to the Foundry.
And we really appreciate it. It's been, we get all the stuffs, and we can use the stuffs, and we can tell good stories with the stuffs, and we need all the stuffs.
My precious.
I did it. Just did it. The Hobbitses stole it from us.
Okay, that's enough.
That's actually pretty good.
I mean, me and my brother get a lot of practice out of it because it's just funny when two people just start having a conversation like that. So,
All right, I'm since we're done in the Foundry for a little bit, I'm going to invite you guys to my bridge.
Oh, I need to get in game for that.
I just discussed. I'm just playing around with Cardassian for the first time, and I might be making a Cardassian Jigaro.
Since you can't actually make tardigrades, all things must be Jigoro.
Well, you know what?
No. Spoiler.
I just thought of something that I need to do for a future mission. Take the new Jim Hadar Vanguard uniform and make Endless wear it.
Which faction are we going on?
Fed.
Well, it's a bridge invite, so it doesn't matter.
That's right.
I mean, you may or may not be able to shoot the bridge officers, but that's the only difference it really makes.
Okie dokie. I'm bringing in a conversation transition. Okay, all ready. Oh yeah, I probably need to be on a team just in case there's that bug. Oh, but we can't do that, so just invite. Yeah.
I thought you guys told me that wasn't
invites
happening anymore.
Don't care about teams. Bridge
Yeah,
invites
I
don't
was just
care
thinking
about
it's
teams.
just a precaution, but nope.
It used to be
happening.
where it would boot you out.
I got booted out.
See, it is happening.
Yeah.
You guys lied to me.
Well, I said just maybe in case it happens, we should do it, and then it's like, oh no, care.
All right,
I've never seen someone get booted from a bridge due to not being teamed.
That's just
Y'all are making all sorts of Klingon aligned Jem'Hadar, aren't you?
Possibly.
okay.
Well, did you pay attention to that picture I posted earlier of my Jem'Hadar guy's crew? How one of the things I did for my own personal amusement was acquiring the Suresh Minna hologram buff, so that I would have someone dressed in a Federation uniform following him around.
I've not found a use for those just yet. The Suresh Minna and Kurlan ones, but I've been putting the Vordo ones on all my Jem'Hadar crews.
Yeah, I got one of the Loris. He has two of them. One of Loris and one of Suresh Minna. Honestly, the only reason why I actually got the Suresh Minna one was because I was looking them up on the exchange and found that the one for Suresh Minna was the second cheapest one. And I'm like, oh, it's.
Yeah, I was expecting these guys, the holographic officers, to be, just ridiculously expensive and, just.
Some of the prices of them vary drastically depending on which bridge officer it is.
Yeah, the most I've paid though so far is $3 million.
Okay, now it's kicking me off too.
Yeah, because you're a different allegiance.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't normally do that though.
Yeah, we're having that problem.
It must be today.
It must be a defect with this bridge.
Speaking of this bridge, this is the Jem'Hadar Vanguard bridge for Vanguard ships.
I'm going to explore all the places.
It is actually a little bit more involved than the other Jem'Hadar bridge that we get.
This is a great interior.
Also, the entirety of this interior is used in the tutorial.
Yes, it is.
Which may be why that bug is there, is because it's trying to treat it as part of the tutorial map.
Yeah. Hard to say.
Let's see. Horient is asking me, is the Jem'Hadar bridge available for Starfleet and KDF bug ships?
Possibly.
I don't know if this Vanguard ship would be, or if it's restricted to Vanguard ships.
Yeah, I don't
I
think.
can't imagine they wouldn't update the regular bug ships too.
Well, I just went to my regular bug ships and it was the normal one, but I didn't go to the ship tailor to see if I could change it.
Yeah, so it's
So I do not know the answer to that one.
Okay, so I changed characters. Reinvite.
Yes,
And there is
can't stand on
actually
the ceiling
a
like.
lower deck.
there is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's find lower deck.
The tutorial actually requires you to go to the lower deck as part of
Well, you
the
start out on the
tutorial.
lower deck in the tutorial.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. Anyway, though.
And you've got the holosuite,
Oh.
which
Well, one thing I
interestingly is kind of the DS9 holosuite.
It's
Yep.
exactly the DS9 holosuite.
Except, redecorated to look
with a
like
little bit of Dominion flair to it.
Yeah, so, chances of maybe getting a DS9 extension a little bit higher.
Maybe someday they'll put the holosuites in.
Yeah, I mean, they said that on 10 Forward Weekly, so.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
someday.
do recall that. Yes.
It'd be a matter of trying to fit it in.
They built a space for it.
Yeah, there's a little door which would basically lead to a hallway, in which there would be more doors, and there the holosuites would be.
Yeah, so it can fit in the current map build, but they just didn't have the time to actually add it in. Oh, someone's suffering from the withdrawal.
Oh.
Yeah, your Jim Hadar captain will actually do that.
I thought that was a really nice touch.
This is actually the first time I've seen that.
Yeah,
This
if
is the
you
part
run
where you go crazy and kill us, right?
No.
Yeah.
No, he just stands there looking like he's suffering. That's all.
No, that's what happens every time we go off the air.
Actually, it really kind of looks more like you're hungry than anything else.
I'm actually kind
I
of glad that
I took my white, so
they worked in the white as a mechanic for the Jem'Hadar. Even if it's not a full-on, you absolutely have to take it. Still, that there's
to be honest, it's mostly just a matter of it's a small stat boost, and it stops your character from doing that annoying idle animation.
Yeah, because for me, if it was just the stat boost, I wouldn't take the white. But because they added the animation, it's now something I have to do, which is pretty brilliant. Because it's one of those. Yeah, I mean, you can min-max it or custom go for the aesthetic perspective. But either way, you're taking that white.
It just adds a little bit of dimension to the Jem'Hadar characters that nobody else has.
Yeah, and if later plot developments have our character potentially getting off the white, then I mean that adds added significance. Because it's like, I wasn't taking it before. I mean, now it's like, oh no, I've totally been taking it. Gimme.
As far as I could tell, this version of the Jem'Hadar doesn't actually need it to live.
Well, because they probably didn't want to build that into it.
Yeah, that
where
that
it
might
actually,
take it into
kills your player
undesirable gameplay.
Yeah,
perma delete.
Did they update the graphics for this rifle firing?
Sound effects too. I mean, I think they totally updated it because it definitely feels and animates a little differently from it just strikes me as
the pistol as well.
Yeah, it just strikes me as a little meatier. So yeah, that definitely was updated.
I think they took the opportunity to update a lot of stuff about the Jem'Hadar because, of course, the Jem'Hadar costumes and that had been on the NPCs and their weapons had been in the game basically since launch.
Yeah, because the original Jem'Hadar stuff was added as part of the True Way being added to the game, and the original Cardassian struggle arc was a launch era arc.
It was. And of course, and that stuff wasn't playable until the 2800.
If I remember right, until they did the 2800 thing, the True Way Jem'Hadar, didn't they use some variant of phaser rifles?
Well, I think they had the the stock Tetrion rifle, maybe.
It was something like that.
Yeah, I mean, just like one of the just default weapons.
But they also updated the sort of default Jem'Hadar uniforms as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they made a customizable version that looks cooler than the original.
Yeah, so going through a lot of the stuff, I mean, just about everything just related to the expansion got a visual update. I mean, we've got the multiple layers of DS9,
and
new ships, new costumes. Yeah, I mean, it just the only things that weren't updated were the Foundry parts or the alien gen parts for species associated with the Dominion, because they didn't create the new assets just by updating those. Either they completely sculpted a new head type for Vorta characters, or they, as the Cardassian species option, just created new bespoke parts for them.
Well, okay, there is actually a special transition from head to torso that you see on Cardassian characters. They did that, at least. It's actually like a new costume layer they added to the game just to make Cardassians look better.
Oh, they've got their own body skin.
Yeah.
Also, the Vorta ears that they had at launch were actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, I mean, because
they weren't too bad, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot like in the they did like when they redid the Cardassian or the Cardassian arc, they updated the quality of the Cardassian skin types. So those are relatively new as well, as they are in the Alien Tailor.
And as I've mentioned in the past, this particular character has the Vorta face options, and also the old version of the Cardassian uniform, or Jem'Hadar uniform. Sorry.
Oh, it's worth noting that the new Jem'Hadar uniforms, as in the updated visually uniforms, so not the Vanguard uniform, but just the standard updated visuals on the stock uniform, those also translated to the Foundry. So you can also have the slim version as well.
What I was getting at, though, is that if you look really closely on mine, they're the same metallic highlights that you see on this random NPC that keeps walking around between us. You actually see those on my uniform too.
Yeah, because they give that an update, which is nice because I got that on my KDF and I use those parts a lot. So it's like, oh, yay! The rest parts are a little easier to color now.
Something I noted, though, is that, you know, part of the big Vanguard pack was giving you 3 Vanguard Jem'Hadar bridge officers. If you open those on a Federation Klingon or Romulan character, they will not automatically have access to the standard Jem'Hadar uniform. They will automatically be able to wear the tactical uniform, so the brand new one that they released. But you'll have to go earn the regular Jem'Hadar uniform if you want him to wear that.
Which is a low-buy costume box.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's basically, you know, if there was, if that didn't exist, we may have gotten it in this expansion in some other way. But it seems one of those like holdover items of just like
so you know there were things that they built for the game where they were certainly not anticipating ever offering a Jem'Hadar playable race.
I think they were actually seriously considering it back when they made this customizable costume, because that was, you know, the same time that they did the 2800 arc and were planning the Legacy of Romulus stuff.
And sometimes they do plan, or at least sort of have a slight vision for the future, because, you know, one time I asked one of the devs, and I can't remember who it was, whether we could get, you know, Breen outfit in the low-buy store. Since we have Breen ships, why not get a Breen outfit? You know, the full armor thing. And he said, we don't want to do that because we anticipate maybe someday we might add them as a playable race.
Hmm.
Yeah, so if you get the outfit.
Now this was like
kind of
years and years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's also the same reason why they emphatically made a hard decision that they would never make lockbox versions of the standard Romulan ships. Yeah, which is why we ended up with stuff like the Tal Shiar adapted battlecruiser, because it's not something you saw the Romulans fly in the TV show.
And also that probably applies to the Borg Cooperative as well, since that's on the that's on their radar, something they might want to do someday. So we definitely haven't gotten their ships, apart from the sort of the dimensions issue of like, okay, well, it'd have to be a cooperative ship with a clear front and back.
Yeah.
Hey, we have the Borg Type 3. We could have as the equivalent of the Scimitar.
What was it? Al Rivera was, I think, on Priority 1, talking about, and he basically talked about they prototyped a flyable Borg cube, and he said it just was atrociously bad. It felt horrible and wrong, and it was not fun to fly.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's just like, hey, they're exploring these directions, and we'll see how that ultimately goes. But I think like getting to the actual playable content in Victory's Life, they did a phenomenal job really fleshing this out, not just in terms of all the stuff, but in terms of how it actually fits together into a coherent universe.
Well, one of the things that I really like, though, is that the fact that we actually do have the Borg Type 3 in the game. It's something you very rarely see, but it is actually there, and it's something that the Borg Cooperative uses in game. And it was literally the only ship in the TV show that was distinctly a non-collective Borg ship.
That was the one from Descent.
Lord
Borg.
Yep. Not exactly the Borg Cooperative, but a similar idea.
Well, I mean, Hugh eventually joins the Cooperative, so you could maybe say a precursor. But I just know that as the Borg assimilator from Star Trek Armada.
Which no, that's just wrong.
no, that was the designation for it in the game.
Yeah, so well, that was a bad idea for them to do.
Well, they also used that shape as when on a display when Janeway's talking to the Borg about how to deliver the nanite thing to species 8472. It's used as a display for a torpedo.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it's like, why did you use that graphic?
Like, how do you keep things canon when the writers didn't bother to make consistent canon?
Define the concept of canon as it applies to this fictional universe.
So anything goes.
That's what I keep telling people who get into canon arguments on the forum, is that, okay, so what's the definition of canon that you're using? Oh, wait, you're basically making up a definition for canon that you like and using that, and because the people who actually make it don't bother.
It's like the diameter of Deep Space Nine is...
whatever the plot says it is for this particular episode.
Like, whatever the shot required.
Yeah. Shot, like whatever the individual shot, not the collective shot of multiple frames put together, but just each individual camera angle.
Yeah, it scales wildly. So does the Defiant.
Because you don't really have to worry about that when you're actually making a TV show. I mean, not on the whole.
Or more specifically, when you're just compositing different models together rather than actually being able to treat them as a digital scene, too.
As the one famous discussion with J. Michael Straczynski from Babylon 5 went, a fan once asked him at some sort of sci-fi convention how fast a Star Fury flies. And his response was, as fast as the plot demands.
So speaking of plot, why don't we talk about the plot of Victoria's Life? So obviously, spoiler warning for anyone listening. If you've not played through the episodes, I know Mark said he hasn't played all of them, but is comfortable listening to spoilers here. So,
if he's basically, there's one big revelation, or there's a couple of big revelations and turns at the end. Although I haven't seen people pick up on the one I was most excited about. But, I mean, as far as the overall arc, I was so surprised about how much I liked this, with how they went into the Dominion, what they actually said about them. Because I was actually considering doing a deconstructionist take on the Dominion in a Foundry mission, and I've completely thrown that out the window because it's like, nope, they did it better.
I was
not
surprised.
Try to match this one. Yeah, that was just surprising with how well that all came together, because it was, you had like I really liked that Odo was on his own trying to do an investigation because that's Odo being a cop, but also being a founder, also being a god. Really great for his character, but it also sort of allowed us to have built-in conflict within the Dominion, sort of two sides, but we never really heard much in terms of like big didactic points. But it's just the setup was brilliant on this with how we go through, how we talk about it. Like when it was the third episode where the search where there's the, like when we were talking with the Krenaman, we're like, oh wait, this is a blockade. That was when the expansion just clicked on. I'm like, oh my God, I love this. And then we got Merrimat.
Not the
I'm just
Krenaman.
like, the Karaman. The
Karama.
Karaman.
I don't know why, but I'm fairly certain in the original episodes they pronounced it Karama.
Karama, yeah. The Karama.
And in this they pronounce it Karema.
Because they talked about this on the 10 Forward stream.
It's entirely possible that the pronunciation guide and the behind the scenes documents had one pronunciation and most of the actors pronounced it the wrong way.
Yeah, it's the pronunciation on Karama. Yeah, I mean, they had so much trouble during the recordings, actually, with the multiple actors trying to pronounce that word. It was kind of the sticking point. So long as it flowed, I think they just kind of went with it. So
see, I don't think it flowed at all.
Karama. Well, I mean,
it was like I was hearing them
SDO.
Emphasize it every time because they
Karama versus I just care Karaman. Yeah. I mean, that just feels better.
You know, it's a small thing. So
yeah.
From an in-universe perspective, it actually makes sense for not everyone to know how to pronounce it properly.
Yeah. So anyway, though, for that, like the start of that episode, it was just like you had this twist which you weren't expecting, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, there's an angle to the Dominion here that really fits them, but we didn't expect going into this. And how deeply they were involved in creating the conflict was something that, yeah, I mean, it explained basically how the Dominion came together and what everything was going on. And it's just like, it just all fit and gave the Herc really interesting sci-fi biology. So like in terms of like just a storytelling exercise in sci-fi, this was brilliant with how everything came together. Characters, setting, science fiction elements, and kind of the ultimate point too, which we still haven't resolved yet because it ended on a cliffhanger.
It did. So I kind of have been thinking about this series of let's call it, what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes plus the intro for the Dominion.
Yeah.
It seems like very similar to, pick any 6-episode run of Deep Space Nine. You know, you'll have several episodes that are not particularly related, but might have some plot developments in it for the overall plot. You have several that are very focused on the overall plot. And so you have a huge variety of things here, in a way that some of the cryptic mission series have not had this huge variety of stuff.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they took it up a level. And in contrast to, like, say, Delta Rising, which would kind of feature characters, but they didn't really utilize them well.
Yeah, I mean, Harry Kim had a bit of an arc, but it's like the Holo Doctor was kind of there. He didn't really have character development.
They had cameos.
He had cameos, yeah. So they weren't really that integral. Like 7 of 9 wasn't really involved too much, except for her reflecting on the start of the re-release of the Vaudouar. But I mean, she didn't really have she was sort of there through the series, but it wasn't like this. The arc was bringing it back on her. So yeah, definitely the writing here has sort of adapted to use characters in a much more coherent way. And it feels even like a step up from season 14. So like that just was an immediate hit. Like they're telling, they're doing stories like I like Foundry missions. So it's, that was good. And even side characters had a lot.
Yeah. They have done, a few arcs in the past where one mission will go off on a tangent. But I think these felt better, like that one episode where we went off with Sela to I don't know, give her closure or something.
Which is not a bad episode. It's
no, it's
just
a very good
it doesn't
episode.
contribute at all to the Zenkethi.
Yeah, it was like a weird random side quest.
Didn't one of the devs say that they'd originally made that put the episode together and just didn't bother releasing it until after the Iconian War was over?
It wasn't finished, so there was a lot of work done on it, but it wasn't completed until later. So it basically got put on the back burner and then brought back around when there was basically a spot in the release calendar for it. So, but yeah, I mean,
but I say these ones had quite a good variety of plots for each mission, but each one felt more integral.
Yeah,
than that mission.
Even a Ferengi episode, it had some really major moments to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Quark's Lucky 7 has definitely been kind of coming out as the fan favorite.
Yeah, everyone's highlight.
I kind of like the Surge a little bit better. I mean, it had some fantastic moments, but sort of going back and replaying it, like the jump to the other characters still hits me a little bit. So as brilliant as that is as a first experience, for me, like I can't really look at the full episode and just say it's as good mechanically. It's got so much good stuff in there, but it's like for my favorite, I think my favorite is the last one. I mean,
I would say that last one is very good. Yeah.
That one, like I was the most invested I've ever been in like Stowe for years playing an episode in the last mission. Not so much the Quark's Lucky 7. It's a great mission, but last one was like I am playing Stowe. Like I'm not just like deconstructing episodes and just thinking about it. It's like I'm just playing the game.
I will say I thought the first two episodes, the one with the conference and then the one with the where you're basically retrieving Kaiopaka, were probably the two weakest, but they were also the ones that were mostly just devoted to getting things set up.
Yeah, the Kaiopaka one is probably I think is sort of like you could take it out because what it basically explains is how Kira goes from Kai back to a Starfleet officer.
Yeah, and that's its primary purpose is to get Kira from Kai, which the lore had her as, to back to captain. So
and that it really plays. It really is necessary for the next episodes to get Kira back in that role. And it's one of those where we need to have it. But it just I don't think it has as much of the sort of the incidental connections, except for we're fighting Herc.
And then
they're still around, so it's sort of more sort of just set up. So it's just a continuation of the intro, and then just getting plot points taken care of.
And the first one with the conference is obviously meeting everyone, and what was it? Delta Rising kind of tended to do this too, where it's like you have the meet all the players sort of a thing.
Right. You have this map with a bunch of NPCs on it, and you need to go talk to all of them and learn their backstory.
Oh yeah.
I actually like some of those simply because of the fact that a lot of them are actually cryptic NPCs who I don't have a backstory for prior to meeting them in a mission.
I loved the fact that they had optional dialogue in Victory is Life. I mean, I've been sort of pushing both kind of like explicitly through feedback and also implicitly in the way I do Foundry missions that you can kind of, with this format, go further in character development by using optional dialogue. In Cryptics, like they started playing around with that a little bit in the past season with the Geordi mission with Kaj Boer.
Now I will say
they started with optional dialogue in that one, and then this one they kind of just throw it so much at you at that the intro mission. But I appreciated it.
I have a little bit of a beef with that first mission though. Stormclouds Gather, because it is exactly the same as Second Wave.
Yeah. Do not host a conference on Deep Space Nine. It will be invaded.
I was so hopeful up until that moment that maybe we'll actually get out of this just fine, or they'll find some other way of staging this. It's just like, oh God, there's more coming through the wormhole. Why didn't we plan for this? Because
It seems like a slightly strange story decision on Cryptic Square, but here's the other thing: is like any criticism you can level against any new installment of Star Trek has done it before.
Yeah.
So, including repeated plot lines. Star Trek has repeated plot lines all the time.
Yeah.
So
Motionless Picture
like,
is a fusion of two plot lines from two different TOS episodes and a half dozen new things that they put in so that they would have new characters.
And how many times has Star Trek done Enemy Mine? Like 5 times? So, I can only sort of criticize it for repeating.
More than that, actually, because there are several different types of spins they put on it. So some of them are kind of... They actually did, I think, 3 different episodes in TNG where you have a member of the crew, usually Riker, getting to know some weird alien while off secluded away from the rest of the crew.
And you got Geordi and the Romulan, and you got Neelix and the alien that have to protect like this alien baby or something like that.
And then I think it was Archer had one of those in Enterprise, where that was also with the
Trip had one.
Oh, was it Trip? Oh yeah,
Trip and the alien princess.
But he, I think it was Archer had one as well because he was in that ship that ultimately like had holograms. This was like the cameo with Renee
Aubergine.
Yes.
It's French.
I still can't pronounce that.
I had to basically get Google to say it to me.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, they come through that a lot. So it's one of those things where it works in the context of the episode. It's just there needs to be like a Captain Facepalm moment. Like your player's just like, come on, really?
Giving some of the reveals that happened later, I wouldn't be surprised if they came on cue because Odo lured them there.
Possibly.
It's entirely possible he tried to time that.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it could be, but it also the Herc situation.
They never called it out, so.
Not in that instance, no. Because that'd also be hard because he would have had to have one of those on his like a ship or something like that. But yeah, anyway though, the major dramatic reveals are pretty interesting, especially with like how they got the Feklir into this. I wasn't expecting that.
No, I wasn't expecting that either.
Well, they had to. They basically hinted at it back in the early Klingon stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it gave a great change of pace too, because now it added another angle to the conflict. Because now you had just rampaging Feklir as well. It's like this is getting out of control.
Well, see, because the interesting thing there though is that the old Klingon story arc had that throwaway line about the Feklir being somehow connected to the Herc. Then they reinforced that in the Delta stuff, or is it the temporal stuff? One of the two. No, it was the Delta stuff. And the Delta recruit stuff, one of the objectives is to go to the Shrine of Kael, where he left behind a bunch of special important artifacts that he'd, collected in his life. And you visit it in the main story arc because the Feklir have basically like walked in and desecrated this holy site, and you're there to kick them out.
Yep. So
thing is though, the Delta objective is to locate an Iconian artifact among Kael's's relics.
So I kind of liked this idea that the Jem'Hadar were not the first attempt at that the founders had at creating soldiers.
Yeah, and that was
they
really
were just the one that worked.
Yeah, so that really kind of brought back on the player character too. If you're going through that as a Jem'Hadar. The one thing I just wanted to add real quick is that we've got quite a few more viewers than usual tonight, so I'm just trying to make the camera shot a little bit more dynamic by setting Jagora to dance.
And I put a spotlight on you.
Yeah. Actually, no, you didn't put it on me yet.
Well, it doesn't really show up all that well on the screen. It shows up better on my screen because I think it doesn't necessarily render that.
From my
entirely.
perspective, it's pointed at me.
Yeah, so it's probably just, angled differently based on your perspective and our perspective. But
yeah, I can actually see a shadow of my character on the wall behind me.
But the one thing I did want to touch on, because this is what I haven't seen anyone else, but this really comment on, was that through what we discover in the series is that the Herc were the first attempt not to create an independent life form, but just to repurpose something that already had the right capabilities. And the Dominion totally screwed it up by basically taking out the fungus they needed to stay sane.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a magic space fungus, and it's been given to the Jem'Hadar.
Yep.
To make them work.
Yep.
So if that magic space fungus turns out to be a connection to another magic space fungus that leads us into Discovery content, because there's only one major magic space fungus, and it makes things more sentient.
That might be a little bit wishful thinking, because they established
hold on. The
they established
fight in the last episode is basically one for one doing what Ripper did in Discovery when it was deprived of spores. So I'm thinking that this might be a throughput. But there's other ways they can do it too, because they've got plenty of other Klingon stuff going on.
Yeah, it's something they could choose to do. But we don't know if it's something they will do.
Naturally, for any point of speculation. But my point here is that we've got a soldier species that, even if it isn't directly a link to tardigrades, Jem'Hadar are powered by magic space fungus. They are.
Well, I should point out that Deep Space Nine specified that the Ketracel White was derived from a fungus.
Yeah, so that was I kind of made that as a joke starting off, but then it's like, wait a minute, that they might be going in that direction, because I mean, there's some vague similarities if you kind of customize it right. Like, oh, you've got little spiky bits and little. Yeah. Anyway, though, it was just a funny joke, and then they're actually talking about Jem'Hadar being derived, partially, just metabolically dependent on a magic or this type of magic space fungus, and it's just like face desk.
Actually, at one point, you get to wondering if maybe possibly the reason why Jem'Hadar look the way they do is because the traces of the magic fungus cause their physiology to mutate. Because remember what you see when you look at a baby Jem'Hadar in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, something very humanoid. There could also be like features where they just sort of add those on. The one thing I will say is that if that's the right direction, the some of the Herc have back antenna exactly like a tardigrade.
Another interesting thing to note is that when you look at the officer ranks of the Jem'Hadar units in Star Trek Online, you will note that they get spikier as they get older, which, you know.
They're playable tardigrades. We already have them.
Duncan?
Or at the very least,
they were always the Jem'Hadar tardigrades.
Well, I mean, I already named my tardigrade Tardigradio, so I mean, I've got my playable tardigrade. I just haven't made him Federation because there's only one.
Oh, in case you guys are wondering why I moved off to the side, I just learned something. Apparently, having these random NPCs bump into me while I'm dancing causes the emote to stop looping.
So, Greendragoon?
Sorry, Duncan, you should totally do this as a Foundry mission. You make the connection.
I mean, I'm just waiting if they do it, because I'm sort of waiting on how this finishes up to do more Dominion-themed content.
No, do we?
Yeah, because I'm just wondering if like there's some, I think it's like a small but non-zero possibility that the Dominion changes in some significant way as a result of the arc.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, I think they're absolutely hinting that. In fact, I think, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, I think Jukon Rex is going to be the new Teal'c.
One interesting thing that has occurred to me after starting to this stuff is that in Deep Space Nine, they flat out said that the Dominion that we saw in Deep Space Nine wasn't the Dominion as it used to be. It is the Dominion as it has become over time. I mean, because the one person literally said straight up that at one point in time, the founders were not trying to create a galactic empire.
And
they started creating a galactic empire because some other race was trying to hunt them to extinction.
We didn't actually hear that though from this. Like what we heard though
I think it was Wei Yun who was talking about that actually, as part of his explanation of where the Vorta came from, is that a group of founders who were running from some other race, and they hid on the whatever planet that the Vorta came from,
yes. We got a in-depth kind of more of an in-depth explanation from the various logs in the fourth mission. And it basically comes down to is that the Dominion was the sort of the brainchild of the female founder for basically reasons of domination and probably security. There wasn't a whole lot of references to another party, and the Vorta were basically discovered, and they weren't sentient. So they were not a fully humanoid species.
Well, that actually matches with Wei Yun's story. It has Wei Yun's claim that his ancestors were no smarter than monkeys.
Okay.
So I think they were like tree-dwelling marsupials or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But the one thing I would take away from Wei Yun's story is that it is Wei Yun. So we've got some independent confirmation on some of those elements, but we don't know if they were being directly pursued, except if that was the Herc that.
It's entirely possible that it was a race that the founders exterminated.
But we didn't hear about that in any of the audio logs. That's my point, is that the
primary those audio logs would not necessarily be comprehensive.
But if it's like the prime motivating factor for creating the Dominion was defending against a particular species, then you're definitely going to make the Gem Hadar, at least, very tactically oriented. And we heard about their using the Gem Hadar against the Herc. But we didn't hear them using it like the Gem Hadar against another species. Like their greatest success was defeating this enemy. So I'm going to say the idea that they were hunted could be a very specific ploy used by Wei Yun in that situation to influence who he was talking to. So it is Wei Yun. So don't trust it.
Yeah.
Wait, are we referring? If we're referring back?
This is the episode where Wei Yun is talking to Damar, and it's just a polite conversation about history. It's not Wei Yun trying to con someone into doing something.
But he's still he's never if he's candid, and he's candid for a very particular reason, because they do.
He also only knows what he's been told.
This is actually a very good point, because of the fact that Wei Yun was not there, so someone told him this story about what happened, and we don't really know how the Dominion teaches history, but
yeah.
Also, I'm reminded of what Eris said to Cisco about the history of the Vorta. I mean, there are certain elements of what Eris told Cisco that are obviously false. Her species wasn't conquered by the Jim Hadar recently. We know that is false, but how much, if any, of the rest was false? We don't know.
Yeah, so I would just say, for speculating on the Dominion, the best source we have right now is actually the audio logs from the from the female changeling, who, to kind of get back onto the major elements from this episode series.
That episode is doomed to repeat.
There we go.
Also, what I feel the need to point out that Kael Prime is on the Gamma Quadrant map.
Yeah, but the major point here is that they killed off a canon character. Another one. So, I mean, we've got Kaelis down now, or the clone of Kaelis. And, yeah, the female founder got her comeuppance.
Well, technically, we also lost Alexander.
Don't forget Kimtar. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone forgets Alexander.
Yeah, you can't, actually replay that scene from the KDF arc.
Yeah.
So
it's one of those things where it's a really big, shocking moment that you instantly forget, simply because of the fact that you barely saw him prior to that moment, and he's rarely,
not particularly a major character.
Well, he is our point of contact through that series. But anyway, going back to the episode series, so she is now out of it, and the Herc are on their way, or through the new the new battle zone. They're sieging the Founder homeworld.
Mhm.
So that was a development I didn't see coming with how they sort of looped it back around to a PvE thing. But it is interesting because that's sort of like if it's sort of one of those things where Cryptic killed off the main villain and did so in a very particular way that's sort of midway through the arc too. So where this goes from here is going to be pretty interesting with actually how they solve the crisis. I think it's going to be they're going to find the magic space fungus again, and there's going to be a tardigrade there, but we'll see. Because I mean, if they find
do you think that will
magic...
happen, or do you want it to happen?
Well, that's actually a plausible how they actually get how they get the Herc back to a normal state is that either they're going to use the Ketracel White because we saw what that did in one particular instance, or they find a second supply of the fungus, which is incidentally going to be the same fungus as in Discovery. So that there's two possible routes they could do there. So they either find a substitute or they find another source, and then another source could lead us into what's coming up in future or in the next season or two.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting to see where they go from here because there are quite a few possibilities of what they could do, as usual. But some very obvious plot lines that they're, they're going to follow up on.
Oh yeah, like what happened to the sort of Kaelis and why Martok wants it?
Yeah, exactly. Because it was interesting of all of the characters they talked about and the actors that they got for Delta Rising, probably the least utilized was Martok.
Yeah, because he's just sort of around in the background, so he just sort of drifted off from being our primary guy against the Zenkathi. But he's very pointedly still around, and I really like that after that revelation. He's faded just enough from the background so you're not really thinking about him in that moment, and then, bam, he's right on there.
But that tells me that he's coming back in future episodes that they haven't released yet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to do my own little bit of theorizing here.
Theorizing? No, we never do that.
No.
They just have recently been dabbling in the phasing tech, where they can get certain characters to appear differently on a social zone, depending on which missions you've completed.
Oh, yeah.
So
I see where this is going.
Apparently they've had this for a while.
Yeah, but they're not utilizing it on the scale they have.
Sure.
No, the one thing they did say is that it's also pretty tricky, so unless there's a very good reason, such as
a duel between Martok and Jimpak. I think they're setting up an internal conflict between Martok and Jimpak.
I actually get the feeling from the latest fiction thing that Martok and Jimpak actually have come to respect each other.
The one thing I'll say for that one is that if they do substitute Martok for Jimpak, or sorry, other way around, that does present major problems, though, for the voice acting, because now they've got to get J.G. Hertzler to do all the intro briefings from that point on for the Klingon faction.
That's true. Unless they just use like an intermediary.
Yeah, I mean, but then it's
a little weird that you get all your orders from the Klingon Chancellor.
Well, you get all your orders from Titan on the flip side for the recent Romulan stuff. So I kind of think they'll keep Jimpak around on that one. They might bring up a duel between them, but my thought would be that Martok's going to try, because Kaelis is no longer in the picture.
Actually, I just remembered something about the KDF storyline that makes getting orders from Jimpak personally a lot more understandable. Part of the KDF tutorial is actually Jimpak semi-officially making you a member of his house.
Wait, when does that happen?
It's actually a throwaway line, but he more or less says that you're a member of House Jimpak now.
Yeah, so that might be the reason.
I don't actually remember that one, but I'm playing through the Klingon storyline on my console character right now. So
the one thing with the hey, Zeph Films.
Zeph Films.
Yay! The one thing I was just going to say about Martok, though, becoming emperor is that it's a lot more cultural that way rather than political. I mean, there's going to be politics associated with it as well. So that's another potential throughput to Discovery, is that they get into Klingon rituals and culture, and say like they can approach the subject matter from that angle, basically.
And what we know from the DS9 episodes is that basically the gateway to becoming Emperor is the Sword of Kaelas.
Yeah,
and we know that's in play now. So
yeah, so with the Sword of Kaelas, I mean, he could try to challenge her High Chancellor with that, but I mean, he could just go above or he can go above Jempak. I mean, culturally, for what he wants to influence in Klingon society, because we know that was a conflict that was developing in that first episode when we're doing the briefings, is that Jempak didn't want to fight the Herc, and Martok wasn't really comfortable with that. So it could be that there's.
So we know where the Sword of Kaelas actually is now.
Yeah, that was that's what we get for that's the 5th mission where the Ferengi episode is about stealing.
Okay.
Yeah, they're stealing back the Sword of Kaelas from Decad. So we get it back,
and that may be Quark's end goal, was to give it to Martok so he could become Emperor and get the Klingons into the war.
Well, like the Klingons are already in the war at that point, because remember, you can play that as a Klingon character.
No.
So yeah, so they're already they're
fully
involved,
into
but they're
the war.
not
more involved.
But I think at that point, it's basically Quark's doing this for basically he's basically doing it because, you know, it's a story like Martok's given him through the I was gonna say Cirilla. No.
Grilka.
Grilka. There we go. So it's through Grilka,
which is actually Worf's current wife.
Worf's current wife, former wife of Quark. But that could, you know, that's basically Martok applying leverage. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, that's the throughput to Quark. Grilka gives him a job. Quark naturally accepts it, and then that's where we get the episode from. Do
yourself a favor, Mark, and play that episode. It's fantastic.
I'm going to get to it sooner or later.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to dig into with that one.
Well, what I find interesting about that is the double feint at the end.
But here's a question I have, though. Said, what do you think that Martok could possibly have offered to convince the Grand Nagus to handle something like this personally?
Well, the stated reason during the mission is that you're trying to bring the Klingons into the war with the Sword of Kaelas. So that's the overt reason. Then at the end you get into this double feint thing where they make it appear that it's been stolen, only to reveal that they had it the whole time, and then they give it to Grilka. So the question isn't whether or not they want to bring the Klingons into the war. The question is, why do they want to hand it off to Grilka specifically under the table, versus just in a general sense trying to.
Well, and I think maybe it's because they want, you know, Klingons set great store by, you know, honor and stories of glory, and great deeds, and so what they want is probably to have Martok suddenly say, "I recovered the sword myself."
It might also be control for the timing too, because it's becoming Emperor probably requires, you know, more maneuvers through the political system of the Klingon Empire. So, because whenever we've kind of gone into this in like TNG, they're like dealing with the High Council is a thing. So it's one of those items where it's like, well, we can get the sword now, but the time isn't right. And I think that's sufficient explanation to say, you got to pull the sword out of play, get what you need from it, basically get the location of the Herc homeworld, and then move on to, okay, now let's sort of pull this out when you can actually make a legitimate play for the Empire.
That's what I was thinking of here, is that choosing when to reveal that you have the sword is important for ceremonial purposes, because you don't want people to see that up front that a Ferengi went and acquired the relic for you. You want to show people as like, I have the Sword of Kaelas. You don't want them to watch as a Ferengi hands it to you.
Yeah, see,
But-
that's definitely what I was saying. Is he'll want to show that I recovered this and not Frankie stole it for me.
But I think
Yes.
the fact that
That
Cryptic
would be
went to
grave
all this
dishonor.
trouble shows that there's a political element to it, and there's more to it than just get the Klingons to fully support the war.
There's a long game being played here by somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it could be that Martok's really trying to, I mean, as Bloodleaf points out, that there was a distinction between ruling emperor and ceremonial emperor. I don't think Martok's just looking to become just a spiritual figurehead. If he
That's a good point.
if he's unhappy with the state of the empire, he might be trying to push further on it. Which also brings up the point, if Martok does this type of ploy and Jimpak doesn't go with it, there's a Klingon civil war there. Who do we side with?
Well, Martok, obviously.
Well, personally, we want to go with Martok, but could we actually justify that in the politics of the Klingon Empire?
The Federation would be required to stay out of it because it's an internal conflict.
But we all have our Klingon player characters, though.
We have our Klingon player character. We have our Klingon player characters, and of course, I got to make playable missions for this one. But here's kind of the thing I was thinking about this is that if it really came to a direct conflict, and Jimpak asked for help or support, or just seeks validation, I think he's got the better current claim through the structure of the Empire to say I'm the legitimate ruler, whereas Martok may have the personal claim and this just the ideological claim. So could Martok become a villain?
No, I don't know. See,
I mean, maybe
he would be to fight Martok.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be a good moment. I mean, you may not kill him, but I mean, it's just one of those things where if we're fighting against Martok, I mean, that just kind of goes with just one of those things where that's a conflict worthy of song.
See, that problem with that idea to me, however, is the simple fact that you need a particularly powerful story hook to make someone like Martok choose a path like that.
Well, he's not necessarily doing it out of villainy, being evil, anything else like that. He is still Martok. He's simply making a play for the a ruling throne of Emperor, and through political circumstances, we're against him. So it's not like he's changing character to become a despicable antagonist. We just wind up on the other side. We just wind up on opposite sides. So we're basically, it's like we don't want to fight each other personally, but at the same time, through circumstance, we have to. He believes he has to do this for the fate of the Empire. We have to do it because we're trying to hold together the Alliance, for example. And then we end up fighting. And how that resolves
it's a little bit different type of civil war scenario than back when Duras sisters were involved, because the Romulans were meddling. They were quite clearly in it for themselves, whereas Martok would be in it for righteous reasons, and Jimpak would be the same.
Right,
and it's who you follow.
What righteous reason, though? That's the thing that I was wondering about.
For the good of the Empire. Even more than that, perhaps.
Well, his point is basically Martok wants us to fight the Herc, and we're justified in fighting the Herc. Jimpak says we shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically, Martok is right about this conflict, the threat the Herc pose. We've seen them wipe out a lot of people. And it's basically a fight that the Klingons should be in. They should be more involved with the Alliance in this respect. So it's one of those things where it really comes down to specific writing. I think Cryptic could do it, but it sort of depends on how.
It's kind of the more complicated way of going for the story, and you don't necessarily know if they'll do that or not.
Exactly, because it's speculation.
Yeah, but I mean, if Martok makes a play for power, whether through the Emperor, the role of Emperor, or in direct challenge to Jimpak, there's no way that Jimpak will take that sitting down. I think, and I don't see a lot of scenarios where both of them walk out alive.
No, not
them being Klingons,
So, and I think between the two, which you kill off, Jimpak being killed off is basically we're losing a quest giver. Martok being killed off is we're losing Martok and that actor and giving that character arc finale. I think Cryptic would go that way because it's the bigger story point. So as much as having Martok as a regular character would that would be fun, but it doesn't have a lot of power in a moment. I think Martok's death would.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Jimpak is not a beloved character, so I think
so
it would be the unpopular option to kill Martok.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the thing, though. I mean, you're getting a reaction.
More impactful.
Yeah, that's the idea, is that you have a greater impact in, say, us having a duel with Kaelis, a duel with Martok and winning. It's like, we don't want to do this, but, we've had a season arc for getting to that point.
See, my thing, though, is that it's a lot like with them and Sela, okay? How many opportunities did they have to kill off Sela and make it look good? Well, I mean, it's entirely possible that their negotiations.
The character setup is completely different, though. I mean, Sela basically us fighting Sela is basically us completing a standard villain arc. Us fighting Martok is it's a tragedy.
But right. But even so, I mean, they could have ended Sela's story arc with some sort of a heroic sacrifice thing, because let's face it, when you go on that one planet, bad stuff happens. Lots of bad stuff happens, and it's a situation where they could have easily taken the route of Sela suddenly deciding she wants to, be a good person or something. And I don't think that would have been as good for a character, because I think the interesting angle with Sela is learning to live with that type of character. Mm-hmm. So just giving her closure in the sense of dying isn't as powerful as giving her closure in the sense of her winding up in prison. Well, see, as one person said in, I think, Deep Space Nine, is the true challenge of a warrior is not to die with honor, but to live with honor.
Yeah, so I think it's different situations of how the character dynamics play out and how to best exploit them. So anyway, I'm just thinking that Cryptic could try to go for a punch like that. Yeah, because we've seen from this current series, they've really stepped up their game with the character development and how they use that. And they're really going for the big moments rather than necessarily giving us just the satisfaction of having a cameo.
I would urge caution, just because I remember back to the early days and the fact that, and this was all covered in lore, this wasn't even in the game. There were a lot of people who were miffed that Martok lost to Jimpak.
Martok from a lore lose. Yeah.
Well, not even that. It's just that if the whole Jimpak is an Undyne, you remember that one?
That was hilarious.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of fan push to get rid of Jimpak.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where they could go that way. I'm just thinking that for story reasons, there's also a compelling route to losing Martok. And it really kind of depends on how Cryptic wants to approach this. So that's the only deciding factor. So certainly in terms of speculation, you certainly can't side with anyone saying, oh, that's going to happen. But that's just the nature of speculation.
To be honest, though, I kind of suspect that the people who wanted to kill off Jimpak were actually a vocal minority and not actually,
Well, yeah, I mean,
this was also back in the days when we were not getting all of these canon characters. So yeah.
And just as a just as a Foundry author myself, if I'm looking at that setup for trying to create a mission with the most impact, I've actually been through this before. Continuity, my fourth mission where I actually killed off a character. I originally approached that by killing off kind of a Jimpak style character, and I opted not to do that. I killed off the Martok style character because it had much more emotional resonance through the series, and I'm like, it just it's simpler and sort of more self-satisfying to end with this Jimpak style character dying, but it's for storytelling, you can go the other way too. And it's harder to deal with, but it's one of those things where it's just it kind of depends on what your priorities are.
As one person once put it, the amount which a death actually impacts the viewer is based on the amount is how much the viewer wants the character who gets killed off to not get killed off. So if the viewer hates a character and is happy to see them killed off, it's not a particularly emotional moment for them. It's just one of those things like, haha, you deserved it, bye. But if it's someone you actually like getting killed off, well, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like the death of Trip at the end of Voyager versus death of miscellaneous Makos.
Yeah, that.
Enterprise, not Voyager.
Oh. My brain's
Anyway,
not
though.
working tonight.
But you're absolutely right, though. You know, as far as impactful deaths.
The developers of one of the Walking Dead games, the first Walking Dead game, if I remember correctly, they actually had it so that their game server would record every storyline choice that the players made, and you could actually go on their website and look at the percentages of which storyline choices people had made. And one of the really early ones is there's like two different characters you have to choose. Like, you don't really have the opportunity to save both of them. You have to choose one or the other. And they discovered that, you know, one of the characters is someone you barely meet at that point in the game and don't really have a particularly strong reason to care about. The other is someone that you actually, you know, get to know reasonably well. And guess which one 90% of the players chose?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just factoring in the human component to that. Of like, you might be giving the player something that they don't want, but I mean, you don't always have to provide them with self-affirmation. So it's just something they can go with, and something I would say, you know, at the very most, just be wary of setting expectations one way or the other, because Cryptic could go something completely different. Like, maybe just treat this as something very perfunctory and just do something completely different.
You know, you can kill off a beloved character in a way that is good. You know, that makes it good. There's been several throughout, you know, the history of television that, you know, like, I loved this character, you killed him off, but God, it was so well done. It's not like I can hate you for it.
That's how I feel about Luke Skywalker. So
I have to say, Luke Skywalker's death is one of those things where it's such an epic, badass moment that you're like, okay, he's dead, and that was impressive.
Yeah, it's just the more closure, more circularity, and just the deeper you go into it. Yeah, the deeper you go into it, the better it is. So that's just kind of a tip for Foundry authors of just thinking about how to do story points like this, is that you really have to think deep about the characters, how the player relates to them, and that sort of sets your expectation on how that relates to it. So just try to play both with and against what people expect, because both can have big impacts.
So the other kind of, I would say there's maybe 3 loose plot threads here at the end of this. One is a sort of chaos that we've been talking about. The other we also talked about, which is, you know, the Herc threat, which is certainly
we still haven't exterminated them yet.
We have not.
I don't want to, because they're.
I don't think we're going to.
They're misunderstood like a certain other type of invertebrate.
Don't worry, this is not going to end in the Herc's extinction.
Yay! Tardigrade bug friends get to live.
This will not end in fire.
Oh God! Okay, now I've got to draw. I've got to draw a Herc riding a tardigrade.
Oh Lord.
Oh, okay. I just with the subtext, best friends forever. I mean, something like that.
Oh, I tell you. But the third big plot point is Dukan Rex, and basically him coming to many realizations about the true history of the Dominion, and not liking what he's found out.
No, I mean he really doesn't like. Yeah, it's one of those things where he affirms his faith, but at the end, by making that choice between, well, I'm basically not serving a Vorta, I'm serving Odo. So it's
because this is basically a guy who's been almost raised by Odo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was like had a few days, and then didn't see him for a very long time, and then Odo showed up again.
Yeah. But it's been like 30 years since Odo returned to the Great Link, and there may have been they may have gotten back in touch.
They may have been, you know,
which I kind of
master and commander all this time, right?
Knowing Odo, it's easy to imagine that he would have, you know, found him just because he remembered having met him on Deep Space Nine, not necessarily because he wanted him to be his personal Jem'Hadar first, but he just wanted to see if he was still alive.
They cover this in a lore blog. There's a lore blog out right now where Dukan Rex, it's basically written from Dukan Rex's perspective, where he gets assigned to a contingent that's serving Odo, and he's like so excited and Odo doesn't recognize him at first, and he's like, and it wasn't until like the very end, after they've had this huge battle, that Odo turns to him and is like, "You look familiar."
Odo had never actually like seen him as like a adult Jem'Hadar. He was like still like a teenage Jem'Hadar.
Yeah.
Now, was this in the Stowe era?
Yeah, it was a
okay. So they
released it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Blog.
Well, as in like is in the lore blog, it takes place during the Herc conflict, correct?
It's not 100% clear exactly when it's taking place, because they're not fighting Herc. They're basically it's Odo trying to go out and reach a peaceful settlement with this colony, this Dominion colony that's revolting.
Okay, so yeah, then it could just be at any point between now and when Odo rejoins with the Great Link.
Great Link.
So I have a question. How is Dukan Rex still alive?
Honored Elder is past 13, so...
But canon, they said no...
They never... In canon, they hinted that the reason why Jem'Hadar had such short lives is because they usually get killed in battle.
That's what I'm thinking, is that they can live longer, but they just
usually don't.
Because they're just in constant combat, there's no retirement plan for them. So they're
at this point he's maybe what, 40?
Yeah, they're about, because it's 2370s that the DS9 takes place. So
I've yet to see any reason to believe that Jem'Hadar start to get old and feeble any sooner than humans do.
Yeah, because it's basically, once you have the Jem'Hadar, I mean, there's no point even having a theoretical lifespan is basically, it's not something you're going to program in, because it's like, well, as much use as you can get out of a Jem'Hadar soldier, the better. So they're probably, they might be able to live for quite a bit longer unless Ketracel has a deleterious effect over time or something like that.
Well,
so I think it's mainly a cultural thing, that they're just in so much combat that they typically get wiped out, especially since, they're following Vorta orders. Vorta aren't going to preserve older Jem'Hadar. They're just going to use them as needed.
But it does state, I'm looking this up on Memory Alpha, it does state that to date no Jem'Hadar has ever lived to age 30. And that is in the some couple thousand-year history of the Dominion.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that one can't.
It just means that they always end up getting killed off before then.
Yeah,
you're at that point when that particular Jem'Hadar was speaking, because I remember that episode where he says that. It's just, it hadn't yet.
Yeah, so it could just be
although
that...
it's entirely possible that his information was somewhat incorrect, and it was just simply that his Vorta told him not to expect to live that long.
Or basically, serving under Odo's unit is basically what saved him, because Odo might have a different take on how disposable Jem'Hadar are.
Odo would care about the lives of his soldiers.
Yeah, so he's going to be at least more careful. So that might be how Dukan Rex survived, is that he's under a founder with a very different view of basically life. Versus,
but it would make him the oldest Jem'Hadar ever.
Yes.
Potentially.
Another interesting thing to consider here is that Odo saw during the Cardassian occupation just the difference between new recruits and seasoned veterans. So he understands the value of having soldiers that are seasoned veterans, which is something that I suspect that a lot of the people in the Dominion don't pay as much attention to, because they're used to thinking of the Jem'Hadar as disposable so much that they don't really understand the value of having soldiers who have the ability to figure out how to solve problems on their own.
There's even an honored elder in one of the DS9 episodes who's actually kind of looked at with a little bit of scorn by some of the younger Jem'Hadar.
Is this the one with the Gamma and the Alphas?
Yeah. So anyway, this is kind of a part of an argument I had with somebody on a Reddit thread that was deleted quite quickly.
Okay, well, let's not take it to that point.
No, but I don't think it was deleted because of anything I said. But the argument is like, you know, the guy was saying we should have playable Vorta because that's canon. Not having playable Vorta was a violation of canon. And I was saying, you know, because you know they're shown to have, you know, a Vorta. We're on every ship and everything and things like that.
Have
every
you
ship.
figured out what my stance on playable Vorta is yet?
Well, I knew you would like them, and I would have been fine with them.
Yeah.
But what I was saying is, you know, what Cryptic has done is not necessarily adhere to canon with some sort of, you know, slavish attitude towards it, but show a progression of canon, because we have this time skip. It's 35, 40 years later.
Yeah, and
so things are not going to be exactly the same, but they're going to show a progression.
And that was part of phrasing this as basically Odo's Dominion versus the overall Dominion, and how separate this is from the rest of the Founders, because we only get interactions with one. Everyone else seems to have checked out of this conflict entirely. And so the one thing I was just going to add in here with the Vorta, Cryptic says basically we don't have them for the storyline, and they did confirm on 10 Forward the story of the Jem'Hadar, or like playable Jem'Hadar, is not done yet. So not even just in terms of continuing the arc, but we may have significant developments with the playable Jem'Hadar that you can't have those moments with the Vorta. So
plus also
could be a point of, it seems like the Vorta have taken a step back from like day-to-day operations of ships and things like that.
This kind of gets back to
and that to me is a good progression.
Well, one of the interesting story arcs with the Vorta is that the Founders, according to Wayun, said that they would be employed as at the top levels of the Dominion, and that Wayun described their role as being more of like scientists and administrators, and the Jem'Hadar were the soldiers. So it's entirely possible that you know, it's like a class-based case system where the Vorta, you know, they're the people who design starships. They don't fly them, they design them.
And I think in a few shots in the Dominion War, we did see Dominion ships piloted entirely by, basically bridge shots of Dominion ships that didn't have any Vorta on them, just Jem'Hadar.
It seems like, whenever we generally encounter the Jem'Hadar, you know, ships or units, they had a Vorta with them.
But getting back to
that time, but that's 35 years ago.
Getting back to Odo's Dominion
over time.
In the way that Vorta are presented in Victory is Life, they're almost there to kind of keep an eye on Odo. Especially Wayun, and Loris is supposed to answer to Wayun.
It does seem like Loris is more genuinely loyal to him, though.
One thing that's interesting is that Loris 4 takes the role in the Gamma Recruit stuff that the Intel officers take in the other recruit events, which kind of suggests to me that maybe Loris 4 is kind of like Odo's version of, what's the guy's name? Franklin Drake, almost.
Maybe I kind of got more of a diplomatic attaché who's also managing sort of the Dominion operation, sort of the second in command, and then beneath her is just Jem'Hadar.
See, Loris 4 seems to be has a lot more of sunny, cheerful personality than Franklin Drake, but I don't get the feeling that she is any less cunning.
Would she ever be in a situation to act like Drake would, as in actually take a hands-on role? Because
I don't know that we got enough of her
character
personality for any of this.
I'm just thinking that would she ever basically play as, you know, do anything like a Section 31 agent would, maybe in terms of manipulation, but
I think our character's confused here.
In person, no, but
the contact for the recruitment events is the temporal agent guy.
Yeah, I mean, even for a Federate, like a Jem'Hadar,
Philip
you
Cray.
you get your Philip Cray, and then you get your there's a couple of analogs in KDF and ROM, but it's worth noting though that the Jem'Hadar do still have to work through those agents to get the other rewards. Loris, basically, she's on DS9. Kind of, it just feels like administering because you go to her for your Ketracel White boosters. And that's kind of like the main function I've been using her as, because you can do all your reclaim stuff from, or your recruit claiming stuff from the device.
Yeah, but I get the impression it's Weyoun, Loris, then us.
Yeah.
But then you've got Odo, who technically is supposed to be above Weyoun, but Weyoun isn't being very loyal. He's more loyal to the female changeling. And so that's where the complication gets, and we're not 100% sure where Loris stands on this.
Because she sided with the founder, but basically it's just kind of like that just kind of goes with the situation. It could also just be as much as she saw a situation where she could get a leg up on Weyoun.
Another thing that's interesting is that in the 2800 thing, that's Loris 3. Which is something that's very interesting, is because they actually go out of their way to point that out multiple times in the story, that the Loris we meet in the 2800 arc is Loris 3, and that the Loris we see in the Gamma Quadrant stuff is Loris 4, and we don't know why. And that's something that still bugs me.
So there's a couple of ways it can go. Either it's basically she's killed off screen in a conflict with a Herc or something like that, or what they might do for like a one-off episode is that they might do something similar to the plot line with Weyoun 6, where Loris 3 is still alive, and
she's not there.
You remember that Loris 3 was part of the Jem'Hadar fleet that disappeared during the Dominion War. She was probably presumed dead, so therefore Loris 4 was activated at that time.
But actually, that would have been
that
makes Loris 4 quite a bit older than Loris 3.
Yeah,
that's actually what I was about to say, because that's something that I'd come up with when I was designing the 20 or so Vorta NPCs I put into diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant, because as part of the mission, you go to a research station where a group of Vorta are studying this alien race called I forgot what I called the giant mountain-sized sentient machine things. Anyway, though, since I put 20 different NPCs on this map, I didn't create 20 different Vorta costumes, and I decided to come up with an in-universe explanation for why some of them looked exactly the same. And one of those explanations was that this one shuttlecraft with several Vorta in it had gone missing and was presumed to have been killed by the alien race called the Rakarthur, and that the founders had decided to activate clones of these Vorta because they thought that they were dead. So when you go to the facility, you find two of several of them, because their clones are wandering around next to the originals, because the founders are like, oh, we have two of them now? Whatever, get to work. I mean, because
basically, they it's like, oh, okay, we got two now. Anyway, and towards that end, the Weyoun that we interact with in this series is not the Weyoun from the TV shows, because he's dead.
Yeah, this is like Weyoun 9 or something.
Yeah, and basically the explanation is there that he was like, oh, he's the last, it's the last copy of Weyoun. Well, last copy in the Alpha Quadrant. Yeah. Who knows how many?
We still had his genetic stuff on file. We could make more,
because it's basically it's like, well, you just have the genetic record, right? You've got computers.
Yep.
It's not like, well, we need to take it from this exact cell culture of the original line. And if we lose that, the goal is lost.
Well,
Like,
and I mean,
yeah,
and I mean,
no,
if you
really
needed
not
something like that, you would keep it in the Gamma Quadrant anyway.
Yeah, you can just keep it in just. Yeah, I mean, it's basically it's like,
Someplace
well,
safe.
we can only clone him again if he's not dead. So it's like, wait. So why would so we can only clone him when we don't need to clone him, and if we needed to clone him, we can't clone him.
I wonder if they take cells from each dead Vorta to preserve the memories of the next
That's
clone.
actually one of the things that they kind of hinted at is that cloned Vorta actually do have cybernetic implants inside their heads. So it's possible that one of these cybernetic implants is actually creating a copy of their memories on some Dominion computer system somewhere.
Possibly.
That is just my
It'd be good for
explanation.
continuity.
So
But
maybe
it's
this Wayun lost all his memories of the Dominion War because that line ended
Because they
out.
couldn't recover that one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that'd also be interesting for the character too, with like how he's a little. Like,
He
he's
reads
more.
he reads in books what his previous incarnation did because he can't remember it.
Because yeah, I mean, he wasn't like bringing up the war with us. It was basically he had an attitude and wasn't just
You know, and he seemed a little different than previous Wayuns.
Well, it has been established in canon that clones can and are weird sometimes.
Yeah, different from each other.
I mean, because Wayun 6 is like, I can't do this war, the founders are wrong, blah, blah, blah. And decided to talk to Odo about why he felt that the Dominion was doing things wrong. I mean, okay, that's probably an awkward way of paraphrasing it, but it's something vaguely along those lines.
Yeah. So in general, like it's pretty cool that I mean they did focus on the writing that much that you actually get a sense of not only that these are playing similar characters, but there are pointed differences, and it just comes again to how strong everything was in this arc.
Actually, now that you mention that, there is one thing I hadn't mentioned previously about the difference between Loras 3 and Loras 4. And that is that Loras 3 actually comes across as kind of naive and clueless sometimes.
I'm not sure Loras 4 is that different.
Loras 4 doesn't come across as naive and clueless, just cheerful and optimistic.
She doesn't talk that much to really get a good sense of it.
Certainly more cheerful than Loras 3. Loras 3 was all sorts of,
I'm taking your station.
Villainy and conquering.
But at the end, she did actually have a little bit of a nice turn where she just pokes Aaron for reasons.
Yeah, she was. I was trying to remember the exact wording. Is like, and Aaron wants me to express warm gratitude and fawning sycophancy on his behalf. Actually, he's still sulking, but I thought it would be more funny this way.
That's actually something that Foundry Authors can do. Is actually now Aaron is completely fair game.
I was going to say, has he been wiped from the timeline?
I know he's been retconned out of the factory, but is he gone from the 2800 as well?
I haven't played that mission.
I don't know the answer to that.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he is, because they did, retcon him out of.
They did do a retcon pass on several characters because they put Nog and Quark into the tutorial.
Bashir also shows up in the Fed intro series.
In the Ultimate Klingon.
Oh, like how they did that retcon where they added Geordi to that mission where you fight the Undine in orbit of Vulcan, if I remember right.
The Challenger replaced the USS Kirk.
Yeah, and Geordi shows up as a mission giver in some of the early stuff as well.
Yeah, because Cryptic is basically like, well, we've got all these cameos at the very end of the game, but what about players coming into it? They didn't want this vast
scatter the canon characters throughout.
Yeah,
which is great. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool, but it just does open up new possibilities for Foundry Authors to sort of take up these old plot lines or old characters that people may remember and really kind of just give them a new place in the the SDO universe.
Well, I believe Pax has Aaron in some of his missions already. before he was erased from the timeline. So
Before the Krenim got to him.
yeah,
Boosh.
That would be a fun Foundry mission to where you like ended up in some broken timeline that just has all the pieces that have been retconned out of Stowe.
Divided Impera.
So someone made a copy of that in the Foundry that was actually kind of like an improved copy.
Yeah, that was Johnny Snowball.
Oh, I have plans for Divided Impera. I'm going to reference it as this mission that your crew went on that you don't remember.
but why don't we remember? And that's
Well,
the jump. That's the jump off point.
Oh God, you know what? This also could just feed back into Memory Alpha.
Why not?
Because I mean, it's one of the better it's a notable example of it doesn't exist anymore. So, Temporal Cold War takes out a part of Memory Alpha, and then you just have all these
ripples.
Oh, and also you got to make sure that Thomas Stryker's son, Fisticuff Stryker, is in there as well.
Yes.
Mr. I can punch shirts.
Hey, don't we have the son of Smiley O'Brien somewhere?
Yeah.
I think he was taken out too. Yeah. What?
Yeah, he was originally like in charge of the Mirror Universe forces.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he can be brought in.
That could be a Foundry challenge one day. Make a mission dealing with cut content in Stowe.
Yeah.
And then could have things like original Earth space dock in there. It's like everything just like crammed in together.
Also, there's the Researcher Jones from the Tribble episode with the Klingons.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other Romulan missions too, which I've blanked out. Like one where you rescue researchers from
Franklin Drake's origin story.
Franklin Drake's origin story. Yeah.
He was in 2 missions.
Oh, but speaking of that, since we're sort of running low on time here, we did want to touch up on the Foundry Challenge. As in, have some type of discussion before we talk to Kael about it?
Well, we will be doing that for sure.
Okay, so another Foundry Challenge.
Because he's indicated that he's interested in doing something along those lines.
Okay. And kind of like what we said before the show, but I wanted to kind of put this out there for other authors to chime in on, is that we have some of the Herc ships, but we don't have any of the ground mobs and NPCs, anything like that. And Kael is still learning how to put things into the Foundry, so I don't think we can really expect to have a big content explosion for things within Victory's Life. So would Foundry authors be comfortable working with, say, a Dominion mission, but set in the Alpha and Beta Quadrant?
I think there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of stuff you can do with the Dominion that doesn't have to involve the Herc.
Yeah,
sure.
So like, in the Gamma Quadrant too, like just do a mission about a Gamma Quadrant species that wasn't featured, or.
Well, I mean, it's like what I did with Diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant. The story is about you doing trade negotiations with the founders or representatives of the founders, because I didn't actually put any founders in the mission. You just end up speaking to a whole bunch of Vorta.
So I think that would make
my thought about making a Jem'Hadar mission was to make something that was set back during the Iconian War.
I had an idea for I was planning go forward 80,000 years for a Dominion mission, but now I can't do that because Cryptic kind of beat me to some of the key points I wanted to get out of that.
Well, let me just put this forth. Why don't we put it out as a community question?
Yep.
Let us know what you think the premise for the next Foundry challenge should be, given the limitations that aren't going to expect anything new that we haven't already gotten. What do you think a good Foundry challenge premise should be?
Yeah, and Cryptic Kael's been wanting something associated with Victory's Life.
For sure.
So we're steering in that direction.
Yeah.
So basically what I would do is, like, obviously we can't do anything that's actually directly related to the Herc. So what else has the Dominion been up to since Deep Space Nine? I guess would be the simplest way to put it.
Yeah. You could make it as general as just make a mission for Jem'Hadar players. Yeah. That could be anything. Or another side you could do too is make a mission for Jem'Hadar or Cardassian players, because they're now a species option.
Ooh, yeah, Cardassians. That's
Certainly.
an interesting one.
And Cardassians don't even have any unique content whatsoever.
Yeah, so make a Cardassian mission.
Player characters.
Yeah, so it would basically be make a mission for our Cardassian characters and like considering that they are and making that a part of the plot point.
Mm-hmm.
In case you're wondering what I'm doing with the electrical gizmos, I'm trying to see if you can knock down the wandering NPCs with them. Because as you've probably observed, if one of them explodes when a player is standing next to it, the player will get knocked off their feet sometimes. I haven't actually seen the wandering NPCs even take damage from them exploding.
They might just be set to invulnerable.
Maybe.
Nope, they don't fall down.
Down. So on that note, we are at our time limit. So Dragoon, if you want to put up our contact info.
Okay. We can be reached by email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Duncan can be reached at Gorgonups_SSF. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman. And I, of course, can be reached at Greendragoon.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our slightly unusual night, although it was actually the same night we used to do long ago.
One thing I almost forgot is that we do actually still have the Facebook groups for Foundry authors who want to, get a little bit of help with having someone look at one of their missions they just made. Did you still have the links for those, Dragoon?
No, not currently.
Oh.
Give them the links for that, and we will include those in the show notes when we put it up on YouTube.
Okay. All right. Well, one of them is named Agents of Foundry, and the other one, I don't remember what the other one's name is off the top of my head. Cryptic Foundry or something like that.
Certainly happy to promote any resource for Foundry authors. So other than that, we will say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.